Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about the concept of guaranteed hits in Dead by Daylight. I was reading the comments of my last video about Scamper with Chucky, which is always a mistake. Don't ever read YouTube comments, but a lot of people were making the argument that a lot of killers are guaranteed hits at pallets. So, what's the problem with Chucky? Why do you have a problem with this? There's also another topic that was brought up as well, that guaranteed hits are a part of Dead by Daylight. Because eventually you run out of pallets and stuff like that, and then killers are going to be guaranteed to hit. Like, a killer is eventually going to hit someone. So where is the line in the sand to draw where a guaranteed hit is okay and where it's not okay? So those are the two things I want to talk about in this video, because a lot of people are really, really not getting it, and I have a feeling it's because they just don't play Survivor ever. It's the only way I can think these comments make any sense. But for example, let's go over a commonly brought up comparison in my comments here. People were saying a killer like Huntress, also a guaranteed hit at a dropped pallet. If a survivor runs to a pallet, drops it, and the Huntress readies her hatchet and throws it, that's a guaranteed hit. But it's not a guaranteed hit. There's a lot of things happening in that exact scenario to get the hit. If the survivor drops the pallet, that's because they made the wrong read on the Huntress. There's still some form of skill expression there. What's happening when you get to a pallet versus a Huntress? The Huntress has to analyze whether or not you're going to drop the pallet. They need to guess based on the survivor's behavior previously in the chase that they're going to drop it, or if they've shown to be a bit more advanced, they might greed the pallet and then run past it. So the Huntress has to reason in their mind, do I bring up the hatchet or do I not respect the pallet and run through it, and now I might actually just get an M1 on somebody. At the same time, the survivor has to think, is this Huntress going to know that I'm actually not going to drop the pallet this time? Should I continue running, or should I actually drop it because they are going to run through it this time? Or should I run past the pallet a little bit to make them put away their hatchet, but then I vacuum back into the stun so they don't get the hatchet or the M1? Like, there's already so much happening at that tiny little thing, and it does boil down to educated guesses eventually, but there's a reason better players can guess way more frequently the correct response than bad players. There's definitely a skill component there to making the correct read on what either player is going to do, and that's good. That's good game design. That's why I like Huntress, for example. There's a little bit of an element there that is interactive from both sides. With Chucky, however, there isn't that. Again, it's like the cutscene. You just do the same thing. If you get to a pallet, now there are a few exceptions. There is, like, if you're like a long wall jungle gym, typically, if they drop the pallet, no, never mind. Then you can just vault and slice and dice to the window. Never mind, not even there. I'm sure there's a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, on most pallet tiles, if the survivor drops the pallet and you scamper, you're just going to hit them. Especially if you're on the haste add-on after scamper, you're guaranteed going to hit them. Now, people did bring out a very good argument against that. That, well, with Chucky, you can sort of do the same thing as Huntress, and the skill component there is getting that stun, baiting out that stun. Kind of like when you go against the Legion and their power, it's like, you do the little pallet dance, because if you stun them out of their power, well, that's great, you've canceled their power. And that is sort of the element that people bring up, like, getting the stun. That's the skillful component. And I would very much agree with that if the perk Enduring did not exist, which it did. Because originally, yeah, I was like, okay, if they actually mind game the pallet and get the stun on me properly while I'm micro-respecting it and stuff like that, then yes, they come out on top there. But if I throw on Enduring, again, I can turn my brain off. It doesn't matter. If I throw Hubris on top of that too, I'm guaranteed downs now instead of hits. So what happens when you get stunned with Enduring? You can just barrel through every single pallet on the map. It doesn't matter. You just run through it. If you get stunned, you're stunned for a second, and they're still coming out of the pallet drop animation. You get stunned before they're done with the pallet drop animation. So you're not even, it's more like 0.7 seconds of difference. So they basically get like 3 meters away from you, you vault, and if they try to leave the loop, you have plenty of distance to slice and dice. And if they try to stay, well, now we're in the scenario where if they try to stay, now they're a little too far ahead. You still got all of your scamper bar, but yeah, they're a little too far away from you now. So you're not going to be able to hit them on that loop. But then you just run around it again, you get to the pallet, now you're closer, and then you hit them on the next time. So it takes another 5 seconds to get that hit, and that's where some skill component has there, but you're still guaranteed the hit, and that's the main problem there. It's not like I'm having to, there's no opportunity cost there. With Huntress, I need to be careful and make the right read. If I take out my hatchet and they keep running, I lose that interaction, and so there's an opportunity cost to getting the hatchet out. But because of Enduring, it's not like with Enduring and Huntress I can run into the pallet, then take out a hatchet, and then throw it at them. No, they'll be behind a wall or out of line of sight then. Even if they're still really close, you still can't hit them with the hatchet. It's the fact that once the pallet is dropped, Chucky can continue vaulting it that makes it sort of irrelevant. And that's why it's a problem if people are going to play like that. Like, I'm not going to play like that. I always make these videos because I know what the player base is usually going to do. They're typically going to find the lowest skill thing they can do to get themselves hits, and that's going to feel terrible, terrible as Survivor. I'm going to play him just going for crazy slash and dashes and or slice and dices because it's fun. It's a really fun power to use. But you need to understand how people treat the stuff. They typically try to, like, just optimize the fun out of everything. It's not even optimizing the fun. People just want to do the lowest skill thing that gets them hits. And nothing makes people quit playing Survivor more than things that invalidate their skill. If there's something that's going to give them a hit and the Survivor's input does not matter, even if they make the read perfectly and get the stun, as long as you slap on Enduring, yes, you'll get about 5 more seconds as you run around the loop, but that's your only option. When I was playing in the PTB, people would try to make distance, but then they started realizing slice and dice, especially because I run the duration add-on, which makes me go further with it. They don't make up that distance. And even if I miss the slice and dice, the cooldown is basically non-existent, so I still just M1 them anyway. So if they leave the loop, they get hit. And so they started realizing the only thing they could do was stay in the loop and try looping it again. But again, I'm still in hidey-ho mode, so I just get closer. They get one additional loop, and then I just hit them anyway. Because the pallet is down now, and now there's no danger of them stunning me out of my power. That's the difference between killers that are being brought up in this comparison and Chucky. It's that he can keep vaulting it. And unlike Legion, who actually does the same exact thing, Legion can't down you. That's the main difference between a killer like Legion. Legion can't actually down you, whereas this killer can. And if you put on something like Enduring Hubris, you can down people from full health. And that's just the thing I don't want to see brought up as the forefront of the gameplay. It will be miserable to go against a Survivor, which would be a shame because this killer has the potential to be so much fun. There's so many cool things you can do with Slice and Dice. People are already discovering hug techs and flicking and doing crazy shit. There's so many cool things you can do with it. I just don't want to see people boiling down to, I save power, I scamper, I hit. I just don't want that to be the thing. And people always just think I'm trying to nerf these killers because the brains are too small to understand there's a difference between being uncounterable and overpowered. You need to have gameplay elements matter, but you also need the killer to be strong. That's why I bring up Wesker so much, because Wesker's awesome design. He's strong, but also counterable. It's great. And I just want this killer to be along those lines as well. Sorry, it frustrates me reading YouTube comments, and it has to be people that just do not ever play Survivor because they think that guaranteed hits are okay for killer because killer's supposed to be strong. No, you're not a killer. You're a guy playing a video game against other players that want their opinions and input to also matter as well. The other side of this argument that I've brought up as an example many times is the map of the game. The game is that argument in reverse. Every pallet is the same thing. It's terrible game design. Every pallet is a safe pallet that you just drop it and the killer has to kick it. There's no gameplay there. It sucks. And that's the argument I'm making for. So it also happens on the Survivor side too. It's not just a one-sided thing. But that is the difference between Chucky right now and killers like Huntress and Nemesis and Play with Corrupt Purge and Deathslinger, all these killers. It's the fact that even if you get the stun, if you have Enduring, you can just go around the pallet again. You can't leave the loop because he can slice and dice the distance up, and if you run around it again, he's just going to catch up, vault it, and then eventually hit you 5 seconds later. So that is the problem. And that is hopefully explanation enough the difference and why I have a problem with this, but not those other killers that are not guaranteed at hits. There's still gameplay happening there. Okay, now the other side of the whole discussion being had is that guaranteed hits are a thing. And that's true. Guaranteed hits are a thing, and that's fine. I'm okay with guaranteed hits in DBD because eventually you run out of resources and a killer, even if they don't know what they're doing, is going to hit you if you got no pallets or anything to work with anymore. But that's okay because that means you guys have been playing the game. Pallets and windows are the main central component to chasing in DBD, and that's where most of the skill expression is, especially for Survivor. Now, there's some macro gameplay elements too, knowing how to knock the regen, knowing which gens to work on, stuff like that. But most of the actual individual chase skill is just pallets and windows. And if the resources have been depleted, that's okay, because it means all the perks that work for windows and pallets and exhaustion perks for killer and Survivor, all these things are being used. There's no perk in the game that goes, if Chucky activates Hidey Ho, you gain a sprint burst for 3 seconds. That's not how it works. These things like that ignore all of the other aspects of the game, and that's what's the problem. If all the pallets are gone because the killer is very adept at burning through the resources fast and the survivors were not as good, that shows the skill disparity. The killer's better and he's rewarded for getting in the position of being now guaranteed hits because the pallets are gone. The survivor gameplay is basically a dance between measuring how much time you have left in the match, how much gens are left, and how much pallets you have left. And maintaining pallets and being efficient with them is the main survivor chase skill component. It's why you can have a rank 20 meg drop every pallet, no pallets left on the map within a minute and a half in the match. And you can have a very good survivor that knows how to chain tiles together. They know how to perfectly be efficient with rounding corners. They're going to get 5 times the value out of every pallet that a bad survivor will. And that's the skill expression. The amount of times I see in comments, there's no skill to survivor. It's running around and dropping pallets. I'm just going to be mean here for a second. The reason you think that is because you're bad at survivor. That's it. That's the only reason you could ever possibly think that. Otherwise, you would have to agree to do a 1v1 cowshed with me, and then we'll compare how long you last to a comp player or something like that. I promise you there's going to be a very noticeable difference. There is a skill component to survivor, whether or not you want to accept that. If you don't accept that, it's just because you have not realized it yet. That's it. Again, there are exceptions like the map of the game. There's a couple of really just stupid maps that have setups that any baby idiot can use, but that's the minority. A lot of ranting in this video, I'm sorry. YouTube comments get me in a tizzy. So yes, guaranteed hits are okay if it's due to a natural progression of the game. It means that the skill was able to be shown. If the killer burned through the pallets because they mind game correctly and forced drops much quicker, that's okay, because now the killer has shown that they're better than the survivors for the most part. Again, map RNG does affect it sometimes, but they've shown that they're better, and so those guaranteed hits are fine. What's not okay is being guaranteed hit because you filled up a bar. That's different. Burning resources because you're great at mind games, great. Guaranteed hit eventually, no more resources on the map. Guaranteed hit because this thing fills up, stupid. That's it. Simplified. Okay, I'm done.